saves on you. It's like, okay. So,
Actually got it multiple times, I think.
oh. Well, I threw away a lot of them.
Ding.
Maybe we should let Kelsey sit here and I can.
Oh, Kelsey, I knew we were
Here,
missing
Kelsey,
someone.
come sit
Yeah,
right here.
we can
just, okay.
Be good, right?
move around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's sliding a little.
Sometimes I'm a
Are we
little better.
sliding?
Yeah.
Have straddled the leg now?
Now you can go on the other side of it.
I see you have a mask. Are you supposed to be wearing that?
It's just what I do when I'm inside, that's all. So it's just me.
Okay, wow.
I know the council typically has their mask on when they do the city council, but that's up to Alan and them to tell you what they want.
You look like a thief if I
Well, I'm here to rob you.
I saw him without it
And
earlier.
I hope I just get a road project out of it. I'll wait a
Ooh,
while.
color pictures. You guys did a great job here.
You be
Oh, you're giving us all the roads that are being done too. Thank you.
That's the updated map.
I think we have one more minute and then,
Okay. You know, start late, never start early.
nope. Brown Act.
2 p.m.
Yeah, Bruce is on, so.
Did we hear anything from Jim, Melissa?
No.
Okay.
I saw him at the post office a couple weeks ago. I assumed he was coming.
You're doing 40th over to Old 53? Or is that you
We're
all?
gonna have to talk about that one.
So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. I mean, we still have a quorum, so.
Yeah.
You want me to start, or you wanna just do the swearing in first?
You can do roll call.
Maybe give him 5
Okay,
minutes.
are you gonna do,
if we're gonna
okay. Melissa will do roll call.
All right. Member Sabatier?
Here.
Member Silva?
Here.
Member Almond?
Here.
And Chair Colbrandt?
Here.
And Member Scholes is absent. So now we'll do the swearing in, and I have your oaths here.
While you're doing that, maybe we could just introduce all the staff, some may not know. So I'm Alan, I'm the city manager.
Dale Goodman, I'm the Public Works Director.
David Swartz, city engineer.
Kelsey Young, finance director.
And Kelsey.
And Melissa Swanson.
Okay.
I'm so glad we finally have a finance director. I mean, Andrew did a fantastic job, but it's very strange to have the police chief multitasking like that, but thank you for being here.
Yes, we're thrilled.
Not as thrilled as the rest of us.
I'm sure.
You want us to stand and?
You don't have to stand, but you
Okay.
just need to raise your right hand. So it is for, I have the oaths of office here. When you, when we're finished, you'll sign.
Okay.
Okay, so raise your right hand and repeat after me, and then we'll read through this. I state your name.
I, Conrad Colbrandt,
I, Ray Silva.
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the State of California,
and the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without mental reservation
without mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
All right. I'll have you sign that form.
By the way, you guys got the sheet, usually you're not supposed to read it out. You're just supposed to
We're
listen
gonna
and
send a buzzer
repeat, so
for
that,
it anyway.
Done this
So right above your name.
want it to be difficult.
There's no rule that says you can't read it.
My signature, I should've got DocuSign, right?
Nice,
Thank you.
nice.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Mr. Colburn has been chosen by the mayor to be the chair of the committee, so I guess we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, well, let's stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. At this time, we'd like to take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment. This is a time for any member of the public to address the Measure V Oversight Board on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the Measure V Oversight Board or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The board cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed in the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item, and comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment? Do you have anything from the internet, Melissa?
There's no hands raised in the Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and move on to business. Okay, so first off, we're gonna review Resolution 2021-18, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake affirming the duties of the Measure V Citizen Oversight Committee members. And that's in our packet, a couple pages down. And specifically, I don't know, do you want to take that, Alan, or do you want me to?
I was
Dale?
actually going to lead
Okay,
that
Dale,
discussion.
Go
So,
ahead.
this was passed back on the first day of April of this year, 2021. And that was after quite a bit of deliberation by the council and as to what they wanted to, if they wanted to add additional duties to for the members of the board to have oversight. And I can just read through this, but I don't know if that's necessary.
We just, if it was new from last year, we wanted to make sure.
Have y'all had a chance to look through this?
Mhm.
There were four items that were called out specifically. The committee shall meet annually in October to review expenditures and appropriations of the tax revenues to ensure that all such revenues are spent or appropriated for the purposes set forth in the expenditure plan. And that's, this is the sheet in the expenditure plan that tells where the money can be spent.
Okay.
As long, that's what you're really looking for when you're reviewing our financials. And then the committee shall have the opportunity to review upcoming projects according to the 5-year Measure V plan as adopted by the council. And we have provided you with a copy of that revised plan because it's constantly being updated. And it's actually more than 5 years now. It's looking out 10 years.
I got lost.
Clear to,
I don't know where I'll be in 2030.
yeah, exactly. But we're looking out that far, but the next 5 years are the ones we're primarily concerned about. The committee shall not have a formal role in reviewing construction documents for Measure V projects prior to bidding or construction, or provide direction to staff regarding project scope or maintenance activities. And the annual meeting in October, at the annual meeting, the committee shall consider and adopt a resolution before to the city council regarding the review of the Measure E funds. And so that's one of the items that was included in the packet is that resolution. And should you choose to adopt that, then that will be on the agenda next Thursday for the council.
Is that
Question? May I?
Is it
Yes,
gonna be
go
on?
ahead.
So So we do need these on?
Yes.
Okay. With our other system.
Okay, Mr. Silva has a question?
Yeah, I have a question. First, I'll say that I was one of the, after the discussion that we had at the council meeting, I was one that brought it up. There was another, board member that had concerns that I did. However, that said, I kinda understand the council's wishes. They wanna retain full control of everything, and that is the right, and I respect that. And I guess we'll move forward. I think that we might wanna actually define what it is we are gonna do here besides verify the audit that the financial person does. Other than that, I'm not sure what it is we're doing.
That is the primary goal, and that was part of what was in the original.
So you're saying the primary
Objective
function
of
of
this
this committee is to just verify that the audit was done, and that was it?
Well, that it is appropriately spent according to what is, but yes, that is our primary responsibility, is not to review or to make recommendations of where they're gonna work or how they're gonna work. That's not us.
Yeah, and that's what I was kinda heading in that direction, was to get more actively involved in planning, but
Right.
that's not what the council wants, and that's the way it's gonna be. But again, I'm not sure what our function is, and if it's just this should be a quick meeting. If we're just gonna verify the audit, I have no reason to question the audit. We'll make a motion right now.
So there were some other things that the council said here, that the committee will have the opportunity to review upcoming projects. So we're going to do that. These things are all on the agenda. We're going to, let's see, and you're going to get a presentation about the budget. So we're trying to make sure that all the things that the council wants you to do, you're going to have an opportunity to do, and ultimately, there will be a resolution that can be adopted.
I appreciate that. So if we actually wanted to recommend changes on something, what would those changes be?
That's not our role.
Actually, it is. It says we're to ensure and that the money's appropriated properly, is what it says.
So then if you find someplace where the money is not being properly expended, then that's your role. Primary role is to review that.
Yeah.
Review the expenditures and make sure that we're doing that properly. You are acting basically as auditors for our expenditures.
Right. As I see it, our job is not to tell you that you should put a 1/4 inch more asphalt down,
No,
or review your bids, or see that we're not
Or tell us what roads we
structural
should do.
engineers, or what roads. Those are decided by the city council and the plan and so forth. Our role is to see dollars in, dollars out, were they appropriately spent, not necessarily whether they were spent how I personally or Mr. Silva may personally decide. But the city has a plan. We're here to say, yes, they met their criteria of the plan, and we are verifying the audit that monies were spent appropriately, whether we agree or disagree on what roads, what
Right.
thickness of asphalt, what kind of sticky pothole formula you've got, that's not our role. Our role is to leave that to you and the city, the engineers, the design. Our role is to go through the agenda, see that you're following your plan, and look at dollars in and dollars spent.
Very well stated.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
And I'd like to kind of add to that a little bit. I think that also the fact that we were given Measure V to review and look at, what was the original intent that people voted on? It's a specific tax, so that intent was there. So I'm gonna ask you a question later, not right now. What are we doing with the 5% for matching funds? Is that being utilized? Because it was part of the breakdown for, and so I think that we can ask questions based on what was promised to the voters and not just only looking at the financials. Yes, we can't get in the nitty-gritty specifically. I think that if we have issues, for example, we need to spend more money on grading versus asphalt, that's a position we can take with a council member or speak to the council about and bring to their attention. I appreciate that we get to look and review what's coming up as far as projects, and I'm sure that we will be given the opportunity to provide our feedback if we think something is not the right choice, but I don't think that's a decision that we can make. I think we can voice that opinion in this meeting, And then that's something else that we can take again with our council members, because they're the ones who need to fully approve, or else there will be two levels of approval for very similar things as to what the specifics of the projects are and where they are. So I appreciate the fact that we get to have some of these conversations, because they weren't specifically specified in Measure V, but the overall idea is, yes, oversight to make sure we are doing what Measure V was asked of for people to vote on, and that the money is being used as was anticipated when people voted this in. So.
I agree with all that. What you said about the intent is more to the point, is the intent, and I can tell you that I've been on several of the committees to pass these things, and I've talked to a lot of people, and most of the people that I talked to were more concerned that Alan was gonna buy a new Corvette, which I tease him about, which isn't true. That doesn't happen, but that there would be some in-park building. In other words, lots of staff being hired, and more money being spent on salaries and benefits and wages than actually fixing roads. That was a big concern from a lot of people. And that's where most of my questions and most of my interest lies, is that I think we have an obligation as oversight to recommend that the majority of the money be spent on actual paving projects, not thickness of asphalt. Nobody's gonna tell the city engineer his job there. But I think a recommendation to the council might include cutting staff and using more Measure V money to actually fix roads, contract work.
Yeah, well, I think the staff portion will be in our presentation, correct? You've got a breakdown of staff and
I
so forth?
have a bit of a breakdown of operating expenses, and that does include salaries, and it is in your budget as
Right.
well, you know, where various salaries are.
Breaks it down
So we
salaries
can,
and everything.
all of that's
Yeah.
in there.
Okay,
Good.
so now that we've reviewed that, why don't we go to the updated Measure V projects?
Great.
And who would like to present those?
Melissa, could you have Marissa do a screen share now?
She's co-host, so she'd be open.
Marissa, if you can hear us, can you do a screen share?
Will do.
Hi, Marissa's the deputy city engineer, just so you know.
Oh, thank you.
She's the one with all the brains. Why don't
Alright, so are
you,
we starting with the math? Is that how we're
no,
starting?
let's start with the spreadsheet if you don't mind.
Okay. Alright, so
You-
some of you may be familiar with the way this was laid out, but some of the newer people, I'm not sure. The ones in gray, you'll see, these are completed projects, starting in 2019, last year 2020, and now going into 2021. These are currently in the construction right now. Going down the list, we have the sulfur fire rehab project, that's just added on here. Previously we didn't know what funding source was gonna be used, we kept it on here. Going into next year, we have about 10 to 15 miles planned for gravel road chip seal. We're also planning to do some preventative maintenance along the main roads, Olympic and Lakeshore, and also maybe some of these previous roads we did. And also we have, Second and MoDOC, we have some ATP funds that were given by Caltrans, so we're gonna use the rest of the funds for Measure V to complete that. Keep going, we have 2023 all the way to 2032 planned out to complete.
So the reason we have the other projects on there, the other funding sources, is we utilize this spreadsheet for dual purposes rather than have more than one spreadsheet floating around. So when there's another funding source that includes a paving project, we'll typically put it on this spreadsheet for our own tracking needs. And then Marissa, why don't you go ahead and put the map up?
Well, but just
go
real
ahead.
quick before, so maybe you could just explain how did the list get created and prioritized the way it is?
That'd be good. Thank you.
So the list initially was kind of created from prior staff. initially. We were new, and that's kind of what we were kind of directed to do. And then when we realized that the city actually has a pavement management plan, a very good pavement management plan that they bought and paid for, then we immediately started rolling projects into complying or following the pavement management plan, because that's the most cost-effective way to upgrade the city's streets and upgrade the whole pavement condition index, or the condition of all the city streets, the most cost-effective fashion. So that's how we, then the pavement management plan isn't the end-all. There are nuances. For example, Marissa mentioned that we're gonna do some chip sealing next year. And I would say that, in 2023, or there's no particular location in the pavement management plan that says in one particular year, you should do 10 miles of streets for chip seal. But we're balancing that out with prior projects, budgets, where we have excess monies in one year or a deficit of monies in other years, right? And we're still trying to cover as many square feet of area as we can for the city.
Yeah, well, okay, well, if you have a question about that, there's just a couple other points I wanted to make before we jump, but you can go ahead if you have a question.
I was just curious, the pavement index condition, or the pavement condition index, PCI, is based on pavement only, not dirt roads. When you turn a dirt road into a double chip seal, does that suddenly get added into the PCI process, or is that still separate?
It doesn't suddenly get added into it because we only update the pavement management plan every 5 to 6 years, but it will, in the next cycle, which we're due, it will get updated, and then it would actually go into the pavement condition index.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you needed to do a full rehab in order to finally get on there, or if that's good enough, which is good news.
So just a couple other points on this. So you mentioned the like 5% grant funding, and so what we've done, at least since I've been here, we haven't really set aside 5% each year for matching grants. We haven't ran into a situation that frequently where we matched grants with Measure V funding, but the second MODOC project there is a perfect example right there for next year. So the 406,000, is that just the Measure V part of the project?
That's the Measure V portion of the project.
It's a $600,000 project. We are getting 200,000 of, it's like our self-help SB1 funding. And so, in this case, I just wanted to clarify that we are using it for grant matches in some cases, but the current practice isn't to like set 5% aside and do that. It's just like, we have this money, we have this opportunity, it's in the pavement management plan. So hopefully that helps clarify. And then the other thing, if you could scroll back up slightly, Marissa, to the Lakeshore Drive San Joaquin. So this was in the 5-year plan previously, I think a couple of years out maybe. But because of our ability to obtain CDBG disaster recovery funds is what's being used for this, we were allocated $13.7 million earlier this year, and so this project is going to take, it came in much cheaper than we actually expected. We were thinking it was going to be an $11 million project, and it's going to be about 6 or 7. But anyway, we've been able to take that off of the Measure V list, fund it with other funds, and then we just push the projects we had on the list up.
I have a question about the chip seal, and by the way, I drove up through there the other day. Looks amazing. I mean, I'm really impressed with it. Couple of questions, and here's Jim Scholes. We're gonna have to stop for a second.
You're late, Jim.
I had a computer problem, thank you. Sorry.
How did you, or did you address the grading and drainage concerns on those roads before you chip sealed them?
Yes.
You did?
Mhm.
Okay. Your design?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was impressed. They look really well. What do you think the longevity is along, following up with Bruno, what's the longevity of these roads that you're chip sealing now?
The goal is to revisit those roads that were chip sealed within a 5-year time frame.
To
Is
see
that
how-
in the
To see how
plan?
they're doing?
Is that in the plan? Yes. You'll see, placeholders in the plan, because we don't know the exact streets, so you'll see placeholders in the plans. For example, there's a placeholder that says preventative maintenance. Marissa can zoom into that if she, can hear me. So when you see a placeholder in the plan that represents preventative maintenance, that's where we are planning on going back and revisiting roads that have already been, worked on or done previously. and then
For the amount of money
addressing
you spent there, it looks, I mean,
Well, I
like I
think
said,
we
I was
wanna-
impressed.
We wanna probably spend a little bit of time specifically talking about the chip seal and all that at some point, but I don't know what you wanna do. If you wanna
Actually, could we
pause
pause
and-
for just a second and have, the clerk swear
Hey,
in Mr. Scholl so we can participate?
Jim, if you could move over to this chair where the computer is.
We have a computer ready.
While he's getting ready, Dave, it's okay if I call you Dave?
You can call me anything you want.
Don't tell him
I've been
that.
called, believe I get called everything under the
Construction
sun
guy.
around here.
I'm just curious, and again, this may be out of our scope, but then again, did your crew, the in-house crew, grade these streets
Yes.
before? So they did the
And did the
grading
drainage,
and did the drainage?
in-house.
Yeah. I'm not a real big fan of chip seals, but I'm hoping that a heavy winter doesn't do damage. But I was really impressed with what you guys did.
That's what we're hoping too.
Pardon me?
That's what we're hoping too, that a heavy winter, they still look good.
Yeah, we haven't had one in a couple of years. We're gonna find out.
Well, I mean, here's the deal, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of chip seals inside of the city limits,
Yeah.
okay, but we got 60 miles of gravel roads. So, you know, when I came here and I saw that they're trying to grade 60 miles of road, and, you know, they grade a road in June, and then in August, it's all washboarded
Yeah,
again, they're just
I-
throwing good money after bad, so.
What that should do, if I'm not, I mean, if I'm correct, is what should happen is that it's gonna lower the number of miles of streets that you have to grade every year.
Yeah.
You mean we're gonna sell that grader?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I went up there at how, and again, I've been around a long time. I'm hopeful for the winter. We'll just leave it at that.
Well, we both are hopeful.
And,
It's we're both hopeful, and it's a double chip seal, it's not just a single, it's a double chip seal, so it's hope.
Okay.
I dug a couple
Okay.
holes.
Okay.
Mr. Scholl is being sworn in.
yeah. So raise your right hand, and you can read it,
Yes.
and,
I, Jim Schultz, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the State of California. That I take this oath, this obligation freely, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
okay, if you could sign it
Sign?
right above your name.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Melissa and Jim.
Thank
We have a question?
Yes, we were talking about the 5% matching funds. When you're getting those big dollar amounts, is that gonna take us into like 5 years of matching funds? Or do you have to have 5% every year? I mean, I don't, otherwise, we're way ahead of our 5% obligation under the statute.
Way ahead, meaning,
If we, look at all the money coming into us, 5% is,
well, I mean, even just the project that Alan discussed, we're spending 200% matching rather than a perfect match. So I'm sure that, in my opinion, and I get it that it's maybe not specified in the writing of the measure that was passed, if it's a complementary amount attached to some other project that you're getting funding from SB1, HUDA, or whatever, I would say that's a matching. It doesn't have to be specifically a grant that says you must have matching funds. I'm okay with that happening because we're then using this to complement what else we're able to get from other funding sources.
okay. And my addition to that is, if that matching fund represents 20% this year, are we good for 4 years? So if we have trouble matching next year, we did such a good job this year. I'm just throwing
Well,
it out there as
yeah.
a
No,
discussion.
I appreciate that, and this is something that, you know, if the committee wants to provide some recommendation to the council related to this, you know, here's your chance, but you know, I'm just letting you know, our practice isn't really to set aside 5% a year. And I think the reason that that doesn't make sense practically is because, you know, grant funds are available for very specific projects, right? It's not just a lot of your typical maintenance projects you can never get grant funds for. In my opinion, it shouldn't have ever been in the ordinance, but that's what's in there, right? And so like this one where we're doing the second MODOC, this is a self-help grant. The only cities and counties that have sales tax like Measure V are eligible for, right? But it's one of the few grant sources that we can use for this type of thing. Like another project we're doing next year over South Center Drive and stuff, this is through the California Transportation Commission, but you know, it's for more pedestrian related improvements and things like that. Those things are more common. So I think if we were to use the practice of setting 5% of the revenue aside every year, we're gonna end up accumulating millions of dollars over time that we can't put into pavement. Does that make sense? Where
Then
we are
there's just
treating
money that's being taken but not utilized.
set aside, and then if we can't use that money until we have a grant to match, I think it's gonna grow to an extent that it's hard to use, where we really should be just putting as much asphalt on the streets as we can every year, so. But if you guys have a different perspective, you're welcome to make a different recommendation.
No, I'm trying to help you
Yeah.
in that as we have any kind of matching funds, let's say we did get a grant, and it isn't necessarily for our Measure V, but the concept is it's paving, and we're paving roads so that we can defer some of our Measure V plan time. That, let's say you got 20% this year, I want that to go over a 5-year period, because that matches your 5% over time. I mean, that's my
I
recommendation.
didn't mean to complicate things, it was more of a question. When I was reading through, I had forgotten about the 5% matching grant. I'm perfectly fine if on an annual basis, you use 0, and with our resolution, we say $0 were necessary for matching grants this year. This is the amount that was utilized for pavement. It's not like the money got used for something else, it's still getting used for pavement.
I'm
I
still
think it-
wanting that Corvette though.
Well, remember,
Only if you get to share with
remember
me.
we are recording this. So now you really can't get one, or else it's gonna look real weird.
Yeah.
But I think that it was just a question of, is there something happening that I wasn't aware of? Cause I hadn't really looked at it again, and it hit me when I thought about it. Cause I think if you guys are using 100% of it, and you didn't have the chance to even do a matching grant, cause you didn't have to have a matching fund, then I'm perfectly fine with you using as much of the money as possible for that, and not having to not utilize this because of. You need to have that flexibility to use the money for the best up to your ability.
And what I guess I'm trying to recommend is that when we are getting funds outside of our normal process, that I consider those matching funds, and that is a pool that can be 5% this year, 5% next year. You may get 3 years of some kind of matching funds or more. And I'm wanting to not hold you to an annual limitation.
Right, could be like a 3-year rolling average
What, yeah,
kind of thing
whatever,
or
yes,
something.
whatever that is, the average is what I'm looking for, as long as we're ahead of it, and I think we're gonna get ahead of it. I don't want you to be stifled with using Measure V funds, because we're not doing it on an annual basis, is what I'm trying for.
Okay.
I don't know how to word that, maybe, but.
I'm gonna slide down from there, or maybe I should wait for her to do it. But, on that subject of the sulfur bank project, you could have added money from Measure B to that project if you had a surplus. In other words, if the bids came in $1 million less, or $1 million more than what the block grant was, I don't know why that's on there, because that wasn't block grant, right?
Yeah.
The San Joaquin that's on the bottom of one of the pages for Measure V, I think.
Well, it was previously as a Measure V project, it's just, we were able to identify the CDBG funds to
That's
do the
awesome.
whole
I-
thing, so it completely takes it off.
But you can always flop that over and add it if you're short on your bids.
Yeah, although the good problem we're gonna have is, you know, we asked for 13.7 million because we thought this project was gonna cost about 11 and a half, and then the second project we asked for money for was Arrowhead and Burns Valley Road, at like 2.5 million. So they gave us the 13.7, these bids came in at less than 7 million.
Do we get to keep the
That's-
13.7?
Yes,
Well,
that's-
see, and I
that's-
consider
yeah.
that all matching money, that's
So-
what I'm saying, and so we may have enough matching funds to take you out 10 years.
Well, I mean,
We want you to
these funds have, again, it's an example of very specific requirements, so there has to be a tieback to the sulfur fire disaster. The Arrowhead and Burns Valley, we argued that the area is geographically restricted. Lakeshore and San Joaquin are the only real ways to get in and out, and by improving Arrowhead and Burns Valley, it provides more resiliency because it's easier to get things in and out, and
But
they bought that.
That money was planned to come out of Measure B eventually, that work was gonna be done.
Yes.
So this actually
Yes.
takes the 40 million that we figured we were gonna get from Measure B over 20 years. We just added 13 plus million in addition to whatever you're able to get grants for, so it's good.
It will- And I'm wanting to let you keep that money as part of your contribution.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's what I'm trying for, just because sometimes,
Thinking Corvette, I can see.
Yeah.
no, you know, to try to be every year getting 5% is just, I think that's not an effective use of your time,
Right.
is what I'm driving
We
at.
agree.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to review with the projects, or should we go forward to the,
Well, I mean,
The
at
only-
least look at the
Yeah.
map,
I
maybe
think we
just to
could
give you a
Just
scope
pop,
of.
Marissa, could you pop the map up there, please? Just give you a quick description of the map. It's all color coded, so the colors of the streets match the colors of the spreadsheet, which match the colors of the years in which we are anticipating or have completed other projects. So, you know, you're looking at the San Joaquin Fire Project, the CDBG Disaster Recovery Assistance, for the most part, on that page there. And so, we just try to keep the map updated so you can get a visual look at where and how we're addressing, you know, not only just the Measure V projects, but a lot of other paving projects within the
That's
city.
what I was just gonna say, is that this map doesn't have anything to do with Measure B, or it does, but actually you're including all of the streets that are getting done
Yeah.
So
along the way, so
this blue
it's
is this year's project.
really not our scope.
It's underway,
San
right.
Joaquin isn't, because
No,
that's
it's not,
Measure
but-
B
Well, I
funding.
mean, just,
Measure V is on this map, though.
just because, you know,
Okay.
that's what was intended, and I think the other thing, at least from the city's perspective on this, is, you know, in thinking about promoting the success of Measure V and hopefully someday perhaps extending Measure V, the general public
is
sees
a map of
the roads being improved in the city
Yes.
It's a
more than
map
they.
of taking care of the whole city
Right,
is what
right.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's, and part of it is Measure V. For example, the project by the City Center Drive that connects 18th Street, that wasn't funded by Measure V. And neither is San Joaquin. Where's the other 4 or 5 million that you saved on the San Joaquin project? What are you gonna do with it?
Well, I mean, we didn't really save it now, I mean, cause that was, what was it, another year or two
Couple
out,
years
we were
down the road.
planning on doing
Moved it
that.
in.
And it was split up cause it's such a big project, so it would've been over,
So you haven't gotten the money yet?
yeah.
It's only a reimbursement basis, they didn't give us
Oh,
a check.
it's a and this is from the state, not from PG&E, right?
State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just as a quick example, when we're talking about the chip seal, if you look in the, kind of in the middle of the page where you see the elongated, point, that was last year's chip seal. Just highlight last year's chip seal project, would you please, Marissa? And how many miles was that?
It's like 5.
That's 5
5, I believe.
So that was 5 miles from this past year.
That's the area that I drove.
Okay, so yeah, and so you can see that when we're talking about doing another 10 miles next year, that was 300 and some odd thousand, I wanna say, 340,000, so we're talking about doing, you know, maybe double that. You're starting to cover a lot of the city, you know, just at least the gravel road, so just,
It
that was
makes
the only
such a
thing I'd
huge
point out.
difference for people who live in that environment right now. I mean, you're gonna see more nice yards, more nice houses, cause if your house is dusty every single day, cause people driving by, it creates that dust, why would you upgrade and make it look nice? It's just gonna get torn up and washed down with dirt, and so
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing change.
And that's all I have.
I did have a question, actually just a comment, and I'll leave it at a comment, and then you guys can do whatever it is that you want with it. Measure V does not prohibit you from using the funds for specific roads, but it does highlight residential roads. And I know that Olympic and Lake Shore are on there for kind of a rehab, and I don't disagree with you that we need to make sure that those roads stay up. I'm just hopeful that you'll be able to exchange it for whatever gas tax and SB1 funds you receive, so that we can use Measure V to keep going on those residential streets where it really impacts where people live. Granted, those streets impact everybody, because we all use those roads, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some kind of exchange so we can keep the focus really on the residential streets.
Is it possible to look at the pictures from the chip seal?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Does
Um,
Bruce have those too?
Marissa,
Yeah.
can you call up the PowerPoint that we have for the double chip seal project, just to pull those up quickly?
I've seen all these.
Yeah, I can find them.
Jim, you wanna see these?
It's a good thing she's looking for it. Take me 30 minutes to do this.
Me too.
There's a lot of things like that.
My age.
My age.
Okay, why don't you just flip through that real quickly and just kind of narrate that for us a bit, Marissa?
Alright, this is the limit to the project of 5 miles that was shown on the other map. This is the public works, we are putting in the culvert pipes, that, for drainage, on Irving, the before and afters.
Oh.
This is also on Irving, I'm putting in more culvert pipes, so more of a smooth transition, so there's not a creek going through the road. More before and afters.
Nicely done, it really was. Who's the contractor on that?
That's
Pavement coatings.
Yeah.
Pavement coatings, SAC.
They did our 1 mile the previous year, and then they came back and won the contract for last year's 5 miles.
Yeah,
Hopefully next year's 10.
well, we had a really light winter. We'll
Absolutely.
see, we'll see.
Yep.
Hope,
I think it makes a huge difference too on which roads we're talking about. If we're talking about Eureka or something like that, that's a much more utilized road than just the individual number of avenues. It's the traffic amount makes a huge difference as well, so we'll have to see.
well, if it stays, it's marvelous,
No, it's
because it's less grading to do, less crew time.
And you know, we did, 2 years ago, we did a mile as our first test, and we paid $100,000, a little bit over. And then we did 5 miles last year for $340,000.
Chip seal guys, when they get with it, they get it down.
So that's why we're thinking we'll maybe try to do even more next year. I don't know when an appropriate way to bring this up is, but now seems as good as any. We are looking at, we're having an analysis done, and I think we would, if this happens within the next year, and we think it makes sense, we would come and get input from the committee on this, but we're having analysis done on doing an enormous slate of projects across the city by doing a bond measure or some type of debt rather than paying as we go, and then just using the Measure V funds for debt service. So we'll see how the numbers work out, but money's never in any of our lifetime gonna be cheaper than it is right now. And so just wanted to bring it up. We'll have this analysis done that will show us options. So what we're doing is we've identified projects around the city, not only a lot of chip seal, but all these projects on the list, we're basically going to throw the whole thing in there and see how the numbers work out and whether it makes sense to do a big push and just get a whole lot of stuff done, so.
Didn't we have a discussion at one of the city council meetings on this, and
I had
it was,
spoken to Chris back in
We
the
have,
It
we
was
have discussed it
recommended.
before. In fact, we entered into a contract with these advisors, about a year and a half ago, and then we just, with
Everything,
things
yeah.
happening, we didn't move forward. And so we recently reconnected with them and are gonna push this forward, so.
but
Right.
didn't you already get, didn't the council approve that or recommend that? No?
No, we just brought it up in
You
one
just
of our
presented
workshops,
it.
I think,
Okay, sorry, I
about, that we were
couldn't-
It was
thinking about
talked
it.
about, I brought it up to Doug, and, some of the council members didn't like it at the time. They said, well, we're paying interest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. but
You
we're
also
paying-
change your community like that. in the
Yeah, I
course
mean,
of
I
2
think,
years.
you
It's
know,
been-
my backyard, I don't care if I pave your road, I want my road paved, but if you go out there and pave everybody's roads,
Mhm.
the whole thing looking good at
Yes.
one time, then people will be like, okay.
And I thought
I
we
see
did
some-
have that,
Something happening.
I thought we had that at the council in the last, not this last year, but just before COVID.
I mean, it was discussed in a workshop. We didn't discuss or get direction from the council specifically on it, but
Okay,
it was brought up and, they were interested in pursuing it, so.
then, can we make that as a recommendation from a financial standpoint, cause that is our purview too?
Well, I mean,
That
you can
we would
recommend whatever you want.
support
If you wanna say, oh, we love this idea, we think you should pursue it, you can put it in your resolution. Our plan was to go ahead and have the analysis done, and then
I'd
we
like to
could,
see the
we
analysis.
could bring it back to the
Okay.
committee and talk about that specifically, and then, take it from there, so.
Let's see an analysis and then maybe
Yeah.
something.
I don't see anything where it says we can't have a special.
No,
meeting.
We're doing that.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
We've
okay.
had it
For
before.
the demo.
okay,
Okay.
we're
Doing
good.
that at the counter.
Mhm.
Not here,
Thank you.
at the counter.
Okay, Dave, anything else you'd like to review before we move on to the financials?
Nope, thank you, Marissa, appreciate it. If there's no more questions.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
I will make one more comment. I know that it's tough because there's so many miles of road. But one thing that I really appreciated was kind of like the Highlands Harbor, Meadowbrook area all happening at once. It was kind of like one section, done. And I'm not seeing that so much. It's more like trying to hit here and there as well. If there's opportunities to kind of look at a collected area, and I know that I've seen some of that in the future, like 2026, I think it is, like the Washington, Emerson, and all those side streets from Olympic to Turner are all happening at once. I like that style of project, because then people can really see that, rather than if it's just one piece here, one piece there. But again, I get it, it's a large city, and it's hard to get everything there. And there is something that we haven't talked about, it's been mentioned, but there's nothing in here. I know at least I asked about it last year, and I sent Alan an email at the last minute, so I didn't expect him to have an answer quite yet. Were we able to grade all of the other dirt roads that have not been touched by chip seal? Because we haven't gotten an official kind of miles or linear feet of grading to show that, because we said in Measure V that we would grade annually the dirt roads. And I know that it's an effort to get there, and the chip seal is gonna help us get there. I'm just kind of curious, do we have those numbers as far as number of miles of dirt roads and number of miles that were graded?
I don't know if the specific number of the miles that were graded, but I know that in order to have Public Works, they need to go in advance and grade the roads that we're gonna chip seal, because there's substantial savings there. It cuts the project cost in half, essentially, or more, because the chip seal guys don't wanna do it. So Public Works has done a phenomenal job under Dale's leadership to do that. So, and then when you couple some of these culvert things that go on, and I think he's got a grand total at any given time of like maybe 5 or 6 guys, you know, to do this work, and, you know, put a culvert in, it's not that easy, so there's probably been, my guess is there's probably been not as many miles of road graded, because the cost benefit is really to prep for the chip seal and do, the drainage work that needs to be done.
The reality is, yeah, it hasn't been anywhere close to 100%.
Yes, that is correct.
Well, I mean, the added 10 miles next year will definitely be helping
Right.
to open some of that up, eventually, because obviously they'll be doing the work to grade those roads and get them ready with the culverts. But I just wanna keep highlighting that that was one of those promises made within Measure V,
You
and
guys
so.
shouldn't promise that.
Hey, if you wanna
The
reformat
politicians
that,
don't.
if
They
you
don't
wanna
care what they promise.
reconstitute that, you could say that the 5 miles it was done for the next 5 years. So you can give yourself credit for 5 miles for the next 5 years on grading.
And while that can work mathematically, it's more of the concept of how does it, the individuals who live on a dirt road feel, where we have not had the chance yet to touch those
I
dirt
get it.
roads. And I know that we're trying, not saying that we're not doing a good job, and I think the chip seal is the way to eventually
Yeah.
take care of those things. I just wanna ask the question, and I hope that in the next meetings that we can get some of those mileage, even if it's low, just to at least be transparent about what was done, for the fact that that's what Measure V is asking us to get done.
I do know that a lot of miles were done, and we're about done with what we're going to work on this year. We had some equipment failure last week. We thought we were gonna be done last week. And we had three of our pieces of heavy equipment come up with a DEF warning, which is a diesel emissions fluid warning, all on the same day. And so so we weren't able to continue with our grading. We had to go and do potholing. And so, you know, things like that happen. Best laid plans, you know, it's
Well,
just the way things are. But-
We've budgeted to have actually 2 crews for the last couple of years, so that we could essentially have a grading crew and then like a potholing, crack sealing crew,
Right.
and we just haven't been able to get our staffing levels up high enough to do that.
So you guys have a lot of stuff going on, it's not just roads, so
Right.
I
And-
completely
And
understand.
there's that balancing point where you're concerned that we have too much staff, and we need to cut staff so that we can have more or put down more asphalt. But if we don't have staff, we can't do the grading. And
That's
so,
the reason
so
why
we're
I
trying to
asked,
find
yeah.
that balancing
I-
point where it makes sense.
There is a balance, and if you're finding it, congratulations.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yes, yeah. Well, you've got, it's a major job, the city, the roads in this city are bad, and it's a major job to keep up. But as far as keeping people in the avenues happy, this measure failed, 3 times first? And this
Not
last
close.
time made it by like 20 votes, or something like that. So, without the avenues, you probably wouldn't have passed it, if those people weren't gonna get anything. I gotta give you credit, you've done real well up there. So, keep them happy and, get some other streets done. Have you considered doing chip seal on any of the paved roads, rather, I know you did Cape Seal in Highlands Harbor. Have you been down there lately? Yeah.
That was a microservice, that wasn't a chip seal.
It was a Cape Seal, wasn't it? It was a,
Well, they called it
3/8 and
a class 2, class 3 microservice. No, it's not a chip seal, there's no
Okay.
aggregate in that.
it doesn't have any structure to it, all the cracks are reflecting up, it's really, it's not good.
Well, what was supposed to have happened on that is that the city had made a commitment, this is before Alan's time and Dale's time and before my time, the city had made a commitment that they were gonna crack seal that street before the contractor showed up there and to do the work, so that really shouldn't have happened,
Well,
but it did, so.
And I understand that, and we've talked about this before, the problem is that Highlands Harbor, because of that, is gonna be needing attention sooner rather than later.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Need to be crack sealed first this time.
Yes, sir.
And as far as the fill, the base that you need to do grading, are you continuously adding on by every year's project where you are grinding out the previous asphalt and adding it to the pile that you can break down and use for fill? I'm just kinda wondering if you still have some, if we need to buy some, what's that look like?
Well, on a chip seal, we're not using any. And we're selecting streets that don't require any because of the economics of it, just like we're selecting streets that require the least amount of drainage work to get the biggest bang for our buck. And on a chip seal, we probably won't do streets that we have to have base rock to unless, and those would be last, because the cost benefit with those is, you're gonna cover a lot less area, so we haven't done that yet.
So you're chip sealing over whatever was there? You're grading it and chip sealing over the top of it?
Putting in base material if there's some needed.
I mean, if there's need, we
We're
might
adding-
add to it, but we're not putting a new section of base
It's,
rock
the,
down.
the roads where we've done that
Whatever.
chip seal are very, that area is really hard.
Yeah.
And so, in some cases, it was hard to even compact it and roll in gravel that was on the surface. It was just so hard that our vibrator, or our compactor wouldn't push the gravel down into the dirt.
Yeah.
So it's a really strong base up there. Not everywhere is like that, but that's the way that area is.
Very high clay content up there, that doesn't react well to water underneath, so. We'll
That's
see.
true.
I mean, like I said, I'm hoping for the best, because you guys did a great job up there. Let's hope it stays there.
Just to ask my question again, for the grading itself, not for the chip seal or anything else, do you still have material, or are you getting more material from the projects that you're grinding out the previous street, or are you eventually getting to a point where you need to buy? Because I think we started off with all of the material from the highway work that was
Right.
done a long time ago.
We get some material as projects are done. For example, last year's Measure V project, we got some material from that project that was dumped out at the airport property for us to use. But then this year's project, I think they're just grinding and
Yeah.
reusing it right in place.
We're doing all grind in place from now on.
And the sulfur fire project is all full depth reclamation, which basically means you're grinding 12 inches and just putting it right back down on the ground with concrete mixed into it. Not concrete, cement mixed into it and water, so that you're gonna have 12 inches of a really solid base before you put your asphalt on top of it. So there will be no grindings from that. There may be some grindings from the grunt mill and overlay.
There will be some, yeah,
So
yeah.
that will end up back out at the airport,
Well,
probably.
hopefully it'll end up at the other place soon. but
Storage.
It will be stored
It'll still be
or
called the
used somewhere else.
Put it in
But, so we
Bruno's
do have to
driveway.
buy base material from time to time.
Okay, financial report?
Okay, so first off, again, my name is Kelsey Young, and I'm the new finance director, so it's very nice to meet you all, and I appreciate getting to be here. So my computer decided to go on strike at this moment, but that's okay. I think I have it all memorized, so we can just go through the budget reports that you all have instead. So, just starting, and we'll go fairly high level, but as you all have any other questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to dive into things a little bit further.
I got one question for you to
Certainly.
get started. I see 2/21/22 period ending and 2/20/21, so I'm imagining the fiscal year goes from fiscal year.
July 1st to
July
June 30th.
So that's why we've got reports from both
There's-
years.
Well, she'll give you an overview.
All right.
Yes, so, and I believe last year, the 2021 fiscal report, they went over with you all. However, I'm going to go over it with you briefly again, just as kind of a little bit of a reminder. And also just to show you some of the trends as well. So, for the 2021 period, we had originally budgeted for 1.75, and then we ended up actually spending, or ended up changing our budget to 2.563. And one of the things that's really exciting about Measure V is that we have been getting more Measure V sales tax than we had originally anticipated. So that's one of the things just kind of wanted to bring out there. Also, if you look at our salaries, you can see that in the 2021, we ended up actually spending less on salaries in our 21-22 budget than we did in 2021, or as we budgeted for. So we, as Dale pointed out, my actual financial recommendation would be to increase salaries as we move forward, just because we are taking so many projects on. But where we are right now is that we actually decrease the amount. Yes,
So when you say increase, you're not saying any individual, you're saying an overall allocation of funds.
exactly. An overall
Just check-
allocation of potentially increasing. So, and Alan may jump in to add anything as well. So then we also, if you all want to go to 21-22, you will see that we did on July 17th go ahead and council approved us allocating some additional funds to the Measure V project because of all of the projects that are moving forward this year. And we are actually going to have a loan moving forward into next year of about 1.7 million that we are going to be taking from our capital projects in order to make sure that Measure V is moving forward as quickly as possible. Then in next year, we are going to pay that money back in Measure V and back to capital projects. So while we will still have about $500,000 in chip seal projects, the other projects will be just continuing out through next year. The fact that we are able to repay a loan of that magnitude that quickly in just one fiscal year kind of speaks to the strength of this program. And another thing just to be aware of is if we actually get more sales tax this year, we'll be able to go ahead and pay that back even faster. So are there any questions regarding our financials? Because we actually are in pretty good shape.
I'm looking at the 220, 221.
Yes.
It says original budget was 1.75 million, and you actually took in 2.562. Is that what I'm?
Yep.
2.5
Yes.
million. So you projected 1.7, and you
Yeah.
actually took in 2.5.
Yes, so I can give you a little bit of background on why. So we have been, before COVID, it had been around 2 million is what we were receiving. The reason we reduced it to 1.7 so much was, well, one, at the time we did the budget, this was in June of, early in COVID, so we didn't totally know what the financial impact was gonna be. And then the other thing it's important to know is the governor passed a few executive orders, one allowing businesses to defer paying their sales tax for up to 12 months. And so that 1.7, we assumed that everyone who was eligible to defer their payments were going to do so, just to be conservative. And so that's why that number was so low. Fortunately, our sales tax has never been higher in the city than it was over the last year and a half. And so our numbers are quite high.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
The number thrown around when we're selling this thing is approximately 2 million a year, so anything over that's gravy. When I heard 1.7, I was a little concerned.
Right, yeah.
Would I be correct in assuming that fiscal activity on the wages, you have a 21-22, that fourth column over, that comes out to 252,000? Are you following me?
Are you on 21-22 or?
Yes, 21-22.
Okay.
Okay, so the fourth column, 1, 2, 3, 4 over, it's 252,931, right? Are you reading the same thing I am?
You're down at the bottom now.
Oh, you're down at the bottom.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I got you.
Okay, so
Yes.
if you add that, and then you go to 2020 to 21, you add those two numbers up, is that the amount of money that was spent in that column for the fiscal year? No.
No, so the 2021 is the current fiscal year,
Thank you.
right? So July of this year, July 1, until next June. So what you're seeing, if you look, it says period ending up there at the top,
Right.
October 31st. So basically that 252 is what we've spent as of, I don't know, whenever you ran the report.
Exactly, as a.
Or earlier this week or last week
Last
or
week.
whenever it was, so.
It's
yeah.
confusing between fiscal year and calendar year, that, you know,
It
That's
is.
basically
And-
3 month spending, right?
And it also makes it more
Yes.
confusing, cause kind of the way we plan projects is almost based more on calendar year, the season, so yeah.
And I would remind you that the reason we have this meeting in October is because in August or September, we finally get the final numbers for last year.
for August.
For-
That's why I was
For
wondering.
the
if
year
you-
that
For the
ended.
year.
Yeah.
For the
January,
year.
June
June
30th.
30th.
Right.
And
So
then
these
we-
are calendar year totals, but
Not
Not
fiscal year.
fiscal
total.
year.
It's just the 21-22 report isn't a full
It isn't-
year.
it
It's
isn't
only-
complete.
3 months.
okay, all right. I
So-
think I got it.
So what you're really looking at, what your duty is to look at those numbers from July 1st of 2020 to June 30th of 2021. So it ended 3-4 months ago. Now we've got the perfected numbers, we know exactly now you know exactly what you're looking at.
I mean, the main thing is we wanted you to see the
Yes.
current year's budget.
Yeah.
Exactly, so you were aware of
The
the
new
funds
projected budget, yeah.
expenditures.
And at one point, you guys went to the council because most other cities, their income revenues were really dropping fast because of COVID. And the city council made the decision to defer Mullen because we didn't know what we were gonna collect.
Initially,
So
yes.
that, I want, if you didn't get that part or don't know that, that was a real big shift for us too. We delayed a major project that is just
Starting this year, yeah.
Yeah,
right about now. So, recognize that I think to the city's, considerate process of conservativeness, they put aside a project that, could have either sunk us or not. And so that was, just so that you know that, for those of you coming.
Question about the San Joaquin project, or the sulfur fire project, is that starting before winter?
It's starting,
October
25th.
25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
this-
Wow, you got the notice.
You know what, I'm poking off some of my neighbors' places because it just says nobody lives here, okay? You know, so
Yeah.
they're plastered them on doors and everywhere.
I think the notice to proceed is dated the 18th for Monday.
it, you know, it was
that's
an
right.
extraordinarily frustrating and complicated process to get that funding through state housing and community development. But, and this is, you know, money that was allocated by, the federal government for 2017 disaster, you know, we're quite a ways after that. But this project is the first project in the state of California to be funded out of that program. So
That's
we pushed
awesome.
really hard to make that happen.
Usually you don't see that type of paving projects in the wintertime. I'm imagining, because what I heard, and I haven't looked at the plans, I really don't know anything about it. What I'm understanding, and this is kind of maybe out of our scope, they're bringing in a machine that's gonna grind up the existing grade, add cement, it's not hot mix, it's cement they're adding to the mix.
they're
and it's
adding
going
cement
back.
to those grindings. That's what the FDR is, that full depth reclamation. So they're adding cement into that mix and water and then compacting that. That becomes your new road base.
Oh, it comes to base.
Yeah, and then an
But
asphalt.
because-
Okay, so paving's gonna
Exactly.
be later, you don't
Asphalt will
usually
go
see
on top of
paving
that.
in
Right on.
Well,
November, December, January, February, you don't see a lot of
That's
we'll
correct.
see. Our direction to them is to pave the whole freaking thing if they can get it done this year.
Global warming gives us a bigger window.
We'll see, but
We don't know.
And it's,
Yeah.
it's been really hard
Oh,
for
yeah.
you guys,
That's
so.
Well, I give you kudos for being aggressive and getting it going. I mean, the worst that could happen is you might have some subgrade to drive on for a month or two if it really goes bad. But I would imagine that working in the wintertime is gonna help that subgrade, grinding and placement,
I don't know.
yes.
I think it was more a process of getting all the paperwork done.
Yeah.
If you'd seen
Language.
Alan
I mean,
for a
we
few months,
thought,
he
we
was.
thought we were gonna be moving forward on this in May or June.
Yeah,
and-
just,
That's what we were told by the.
Yeah.
yeah, so this
In the
is,
perfect world.
congratulations. It's,
Hey, does anyone have any other questions for the 2021 budget?
I do, just real quick. For the salaries, going up and down, what's the position allocations for those salaries?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think it changed.
So it's just that there was salary savings, is that why it's lower this year? Cause it's weird that it's lower this year than last year.
Oh, the budget
without it
amount?
changing, yeah.
I don't think we reduced any.
So we did a little bit, but part of that is because there was salary savings, we ended up with about, 100,000.
So you just readjusted based on your
Exactly.
experience from the previous year, gotcha.
We currently have 4 full-time positions that are vacant in our roads.
That are vacant.
It's just been
It's hard to
impossible to
get
get people.
We are recruiting 100% of the time for
Mhm.
those positions.
Right.
Pretty much like everybody else.
People are being paid too much to not work. And so it's tough to get people to come and actually do something for their money.
But that's
So-
another subject.
If I may, just, not to go on a tangent, but I did find out that 21 of our daycares have completely shut down over the past 18 months.
Wow.
So that does not help if it's a family person trying to get into a job, if they don't have the ability to put their child anywhere.
True.
So
That's true.
that definitely is another problem that we have to deal with.
Yeah, lots of problems.
Thank you for the,
Mhm.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, would we like to next look at the adoption of the resolution that's been presented before us and see if we want to approve that or make it pass the resolution as is or make additions
can
or
I
deletions?
apologize? I do have one other question I forgot to ask. Kelsey, you said $500,000 for double chip seal, but in the program it says $1 million for the double chip seal. I just kinda wanted to check in on that, conflict, of numbers.
I think we put the spreadsheet together some time ago, and Alan and Kelsey are always updating the budgets, and so we'll have to update that. And we update the spreadsheet multiple times per year, so that happened to be not updated yet.
I mean, and just so you know, I mean, it's always in a little bit of, I mean, you're always dealing with budgets, a little bit of flux. We wanna do as much as we can, and,
So we're looking at a minimum, most likely, of 5 miles with the hopes and anticipation you can get to the 10 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm really done, I'm sorry.
sure.
He's never done. All right, so the resolution number OC 2021-01, you see that, section E, item 5?
Page 32, the corner
Yeah,
right.
page 32. And would someone like to present that resolution and have a second?
I'll offer the resolution.
Okay,
I'd like to make an amendment to it.
okay,
I think it should reflect, given the information provided to us, this is what we've decided.
okay,
I'd like to have that added into the record.
okay.
Do you need to have a second?
I amend my motion to reflect that statement, it seems appropriate to say, with the materials provided by staff.
Okay, qualified it, okay. The second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Silva seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's the 5 ayes. All right, motion carries, resolution carries. And Melissa, when you, add that little phrase in, just let me know and I'll sign that.
Yes.
I have the last page twice, if anybody
Okay.
didn't. Minutes.
Okay, does any of the staff want to,
There's
give
one
city
other-
manager,
I believe we
board
need
member
to go through the
reports?
minutes.
One other item, Mr. Colbert, the, minutes from last year's meeting are also on there, if we could,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
yeah, number 6.
Yeah, number 6, we have, actually, it says recommend review and file. I don't know, are there enough of this from the previous,
I'm
Yeah.
Three of
I'm the
us.
last man standing from the original committee.
so,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's,
There's 3 of us,
I think
there's 3 of
are
us.
here.
3 of you? Okay, so
Yeah,
let's
there's
go
3 of
ahead and
us.
we'll take a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
3 ayes and 2
Abstain.
abstentions, right? Because we weren't here, so.
Okay.
Okay. Now, any city manager, board member reports they'd like to share? We
I
pretty
don't-
much shared everything going along.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just appreciate your input, and as we move forward with the possibility of some type of, you know, debt to do a bunch of projects, we'll schedule a meeting with the committee to
Yeah.
talk about it.
I'd like to see what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely, that could be a future agenda item for a special meeting perhaps.
I love that you're looking into it.
Mhm.
I do have just a quick side question. For the 2026, and I guess this would be under member reports.
You already said that was your last question earlier.
And it's no longer a question, it's a comment. No, there's a question in there, but it's a side thing, but it's related to roads. Washington is a private street, yet you have it as a street that you will be repaving. Has the city decided to move forward with moving from private to public roads on specific roads? Is there a policy as to how that can work?
Well, we did talk about that, as you may recall, with the council. It's been a little while, and they gave some direction on how to approach that. We haven't been approached by any property owners about bringing their street in, but I guess I would just say that in our analysis that we're gonna be presenting to the advisors with the debt, we are identifying a few areas of the city that we think it would make sense to go ahead and invest in those private streets. And then we'll have to figure out how we'll handle that if we decide that we wanna do a big enough bond issuance or whatever to handle that. So, that's just as
So
far
there
as
is
we've taken it,
progress on that topic.
a little bit.
I
Okay,
got a comment. Oh, go ahead.
thank you. I'm gonna encourage that we recommend what I call the colored streets, because that's where you first come into town, and especially in the winter time, it makes us look like a third world country. You know,
You'll
'cause
be
they're-
happy to know that those streets are circled and on our list. then.
Good,
You
yay.
don't like the
I mean-
winter pond?
Well, you know, I direct people in and have for a long time to come all the way down to Lakeshore Drive and come in on. And they don't. When they're coming from the 5, they always turn on Olympic. So when you go down Olympic and the first part of the city you see are those terrible roads, especially in the winter, it just,
Doesn't the chief of police live down there somewhere?
not anymore.
Not anymore.
Oh, he moved, where'd he move to?
Member
right up
Lane,
here.
I believe.
By the Calvary Chapel.
He's still in town though.
Yeah, on
I
top of
like that. I-
Closer to the office.
Not good.
Ray,
I
Ray,
like
you had a
to-
comment? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm gonna let it go.
Okay.
But I do want to make a comment on that. I love that they're living in town, Alan.
There's other personal reasons why we didn't buy a house in town, right, just so you know.
We're happy to have you.
As a
All right.
final comment, I would like to remind the city that I do live on a public street.
Mine's in the.
I totally
plan.
thought it was private until we had this conversation,
Yeah.
so.
Does anybody have anything they wanna bring up before we adjourn?
Thank you, Conrad.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice
Very well
job,
done.
Conrad.
Thanks.
Good job.
Nice meeting you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I was so stuck that it was a private road that I even yelled enough at Keith Ahart that he actually graded it for you.